Identifying skill gaps, nurturing talent, and filing vacant positions through L&D and HR intervention is a critical priority for success and growth of any organization. And this calls for a sustainable talent pipeline that consistently identifies and prepares talent for an open position across the organization. But building a sustainable talent pipeline is easier said than done, which is why L&D readiness is of utmost importance to make an organization future-proof and giving the desired competitive advantage. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to an insightful webcast on the topic L&D readiness and building a sustainable talent pipeline. This session will give you expert insights, tips, and tricks on talent management, HR, L&D interventions for internal development, optimizing performance, calibration, and L&D agility. Quick housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to use the chat window. I will bring them up at the end during the 15 minutes reserved for Q&A. You will receive a complimentary handbook that will highlight all the insights from the webcast, so stay tuned to your inbox. This webcast is brought to you by Upside LMS in association with People Matters. Upside LMS is a leading learn tech provider of an AI-powered learning management system and a comprehensive off-the-shelf content library called Plethora. It is backed by over 16 years of experience and 50 plus awards and recognition and over 1 million happy users worldwide. So let's get started. Joining us today is Anita Chhabria, Deputy General Manager, International HR at Gulf Oil International. Anita has over 12 years of HR experience in different domains and across different sectors like IT, media, and lubricants. Based in Mumbai, Anita handles a global portfolio in the OD space and is involved in rolling out systems, policies, and processes globally for Gulf Oil. Anita also leads the learning and development practice and manages content for their organization global training program. The latest feather in her cap is the Young HR Achievers Award, conferred by the World HRD Congress in February 2019 for her contribution in HR field. Anita is passionate about writing and contributes to notable publications like Time Ascent, Economic Times, Property Times, ET Travel, and several newsletters and online HR blogs. She is an avid traveler, book lover with a sprinkling of creative art pursuits. On the personal front, Anita is a cool and doting mother to her 5-year-old daughter. Anita, it's great to have you on board, and I can't wait to get your insights on today's session.
Thank you so much, Shruti. Happy to be here and humbled by your introduction.
Yeah. Also joining us today is a learning technology enthusiast, an Apple fanboy, a human at heart, and a leader who has made trailblazing his middle name. An IIM and NIT alumni, he's the key idea generator for Upside LMS product team, a salesman and marketing orchestrator, a learning technology solution consultant for clients and prospects. Also a mentor for all the function heads, Amit Gautam, CEO of Upside LMS. Welcome, Amit. It's great to have you here again.
Thank you, Shruti. And thank you, Anita, for being here. And thank you, everyone, for this session today. And I hope we have a good session and I can add some value to your time today.
Great. Anita and Amit, I want to kickstart the webcast by taking few questions with Anita you. The question that is there on top of every organization priority list, why align talent management with business strategy?
Sure, Shruti. So, business strategy is a compass that navigates any corporate ship. According to one of the recent studies conducted by Quantum Workplace along with Harvard Business Review services teams, they confirmed that 81% of the business leaders strongly agree that highly engaged workforce performs better and are more productive towards achieving any business strategy. So that goes on to show us that business strategy, yes, is a culmination of the vision and mission of the organization, along with the organizational attributes and backed by the mega trends that operates in the markets. So once the strategy is formulated, rest of the departments also derive their own vision and plan towards working and achieving the common business goals set. Having said that, people is the most important asset for any organization. So it's only natural to have a synergy that's cast in stone between the business strategy as well as the talent within the organization for any successful organization. Cognitively speaking, this is a rather simple process, but when you come down on ground, the reality can be very different and challenging. It is prudent that all departments are operating on the same page to derive maximum benefit there. To achieve this, one of the important ingredients is also sticking to the compliances. So we need to review compliances as an enabler and not as a pause. So many of our hard-bound and hardwired thought processes, methods, methodologies can undergo a definitive change if we have the mindset. And this mindset will only come through rather the valuable talent within the organization. So, if we have these licenses, the sanctions, the legalities, the regulatory policies taken care of, it will only provide the required space for the organization to allow and grow the talent in line with the business strategy. So, it is definitely an enabler for us that we need to value. Also, to state that channelizing the energy of this talent and it can be a real stepping stone towards achieving and formulating the success mantra for any organization. The seamless adoption and multiple professional skills that we would want to attribute and give across to our talent is only going to help us provide them with a robust learning culture that would also give them a natural sense of belongingness to the organization in order to achieve the business goals. So I think it is extremely essential for the talent to be aligned very well with the business strategy, and it will only help them realize their own potential as the next generation leaders, and like Shruti mentioned rightfully at the start, to make them future ready.
Great. I really liked your last note on channelizing the talent part. Moving on, Amit, what are your views on aligning talent management with business strategy?
Sure, thank you. And I think Anita did focus on a very, very key point there, which is the people. And of course, talent
Yes.
is all about people. So, in my experience, any strategy, not just business strategy, even like a strategy for a small branch office or a full strategy or a business marketing strategy, any strategy is as good as the people who will execute it. Because in the end, it involves, let's say if you take a business strategy or a full org strategy, it'll touch across the entire company. It'll go through every department and function, as Anita mentioned, and then in the end basically it's going to touch point every person in the company. And if it depends on how they execute the strategy, then your strategy is only as strong as the weakest in your entire company. And when I say weakest, it is not about skill or no skill, it is about preparedness or readiness, as she mentioned, for the future. So I think it is as good as the people who execute the strategy. And if you look at talent, I don't look at talent as a set of skills I have for today, but it is more about, are we ready as a people, as a company, to take on what challenges we will face in the future as an organization. So can whatever strategy my organization is working on, is my talent pool or my people ready to take on that strategy and execute that properly? And that is where I think my third point, which I believe is very important, is because an organization is actually a collection of many people. So it is very, very important that all the levels, across all the levels in the company, there is a foolproof succession planning which is happening. Because it is not just about CEO or CXO level planning. You have to be prepared for who is going to take on next once this skill is not with us. And it does not mean replacing people, it only means reskilling, upskilling, and unlearning and learning new things. So that would definitely be a very key aspect of this. And again, coming back to the same point, so every action plan in the strategy would finally have to end up with the question, who will do, or when I say who, it's either a single person or a team of people. So who will do that? So if it is all about people who are going to execute the strategy, then alignment of the entire talent management or the talent pool or every single person in the company with your strategy is extremely important.
Yes, yes. Amit very rightly said, and also Anita, as you highlighted, any strategy is as good as people who will execute it. Great quote there. Anita, can you shed some light on the process of addressing talent gaps through international development and HR and L&D interventions?
Sure. So I firmly believe whatever we can conceive and believe, we can definitely achieve. Having said that, most business crises do not come with a playbook for us. So challenges could be operational, they could be functional, they could be product based, they could be culture induced, or they could even be the talent gaps that you mentioned. So talent gap identification is a very standardized and a uniform 5-step process that has to be followed by any organization. It all begins with identifying the business orientation. What is the inclination towards which your business is planning to move? Followed by anticipating the needs for the future, which means what is the kind of knowledge base that you need, which are the kind of skills that you would require, and what attributes would the organization value in time to come. This is followed by the most important step 3, which involves reviewing the talent which is available within the organization. So I might be today an L&D professional, but I might have a separate expertise in terms of, say, designing a presentation, or my presentation skills could be exemplary. Now these skills could also be replicated in making investor pitches. So I might be able to leverage that skill in the organization in another department, which will only bring benefit out of it. So this repository has to be maintained by the HR team member and also kept on getting updated so that these pool of skills could be utilized at the optimum level. Then followed by designing a lucid plan, which eventually will result into an implementation. So this process, if followed very religiously, can gain major benefits in bridging the talent gap. Also, when a requirement is identified, it could be met by tapping local or global resources depending on the organization. It not only allows the organization to position the talent pool better, it also gives them the chance to enlarge their role, to take on international mobility, to increase their network, and eventually accentuate their professional development. Training, in the traditional sense, we refer to as the classroom training. But today, we can have a blended learning approach. Training need not be dominated by instructor led training courses. It could be further enhanced through info capsules, through bite sized learning, through providing with e learning platforms, which are nurtured with several podcasts and webinars. As such, so as to challenge the existing paradigms. Now, all these ways can also be done through in-house interventions. We have certainly certain seasoned professionals, industry experts, and stalwarts who can help us nurture the talent within, and they could also help us upskilling and rebuilding their capabilities. So what we end up with is a very strong succession pipeline, and we have a multi-talented workforce which would be agile and ready to take on new responsibilities as and when required. Hence, these are some of the methods that you can use to bridge the talent gap within an organization.
Okay, rightly put. Amit, speaking about skills and capability rebuilding, what are your thoughts on talent gaps and internal development?
So I think Anita has been doing this for years, and her experience is invaluable in managing talent internally within a company. And I'm sure she has great understanding of how things work. So yes, we have worked with many customers, and through that experience, we understand one thing, and it's this. This is what has come from people we work with, is that everybody believes at the core of their thinking and their planning is that the best talent is what is available within the company right now, and that is your best shot at executing your strategy. Because yes, it is possible to hire people from outside, but just for them to be inducted into the company, be ready to work at the level they were brought in, that takes a lot of time, and time is something which is not a luxury. It is a luxury today. It is not something we can really manage very well. And so while so I think, so what is happening is, there are two things which is happening in my perspective, is from my perspective, which is, one is the talent which is we with us in the company, that has to be nurtured very, very well, very, very judiciously. The second is the demand for skills from the same, let's say, person. It is changing at a very rapid rate. So what we think is talent today may not be really a talent tomorrow, because the skills, the business context is changing, the things are changing. So what I can do good today is not really required tomorrow by the company. So the constant and non-stop development of talent is the key to growth. there is no milestone we can say, okay, today we have done, let's say this is our quarter, we have done this much of training and this is enough, this is not enough. And I think a lot of companies have realized that. And as Anita mentioned, you have to look at all the sources, all the ways, all the technologies and tools available to do this, because you just cannot do a non-stop development of people using only one mode of training or instruction. So you have to use whatever you have available. But planning shorter cycles, adapting to the changing times is also very key. You don't really have, what is relevant today may not be relevant tomorrow. So what it leads to is it's a constant cycle of unlearning, learning new skills, upskilling, reskilling. And I think on the softer side, we have to be very, very careful, because this can also be a burden on an individual in terms of how much to learn and unlearn. So the planning of interventions and instructions have to be very, very thought out. It might be better to have less, when I say training, less training per se, but it has to be more relevant to what they are doing today and also ready for the short term tomorrow.
Yes, I think that's great what you said, that how a talent, we might think, there's a talent today that might go redundant tomorrow. And all of this has to be, implemented very thoughtfully. That's a great quote that you put out there. Moving on to the next question, Anita, performance calibration is a critical aspect in every organization. Can you share some insights on that front?
Absolutely. So, when it comes to HR professionals, that's part of our bread and butter, right? So, there are many ways that an individual can be assessed and managed with the aim of eliciting the optimum performance that the organization would expect, from conducting annual appraisals to having frequent review discussions, having project based discussions, or even supporting them with, say, coaching discussions. In my view, and this is my personal view, that annual appraisals provide a rather rear view mirror approach, if I can put it that way, to any employee. So you can only review what is being done, whether it was wrong or right, and you cannot take any corrective actions. So I would definitely urge organizations to look at more frequent reviews. They could be formal or informal in their setups, but then different organizations subscribe to different views, and each to his own, so they adopt different mechanisms to cope with their appraisals. But driving a performance and a merit based culture is the key to its success. Any kind of positive acclaim or affirmation or for a job well done is definitely going to provide the required impetus to any employee and energize the entire team for performing better in the future. So this impetus can be further accentuated if we understand that there is a learning culture within the organization, and organization is going to help you cover your areas of improvements. So the learning culture will eventually become the bedrock of your robust performance calibration exercise. Performance assessment, I would define it as the level of proficiency juxtaposed to the role competency requirement that you may have. This in any exercise that provides us with substantial inputs to identify which are the interim touch points that the employee wants to grow in or improve upon, or then looking at their individual development plans will always give us many major inputs in terms of reviewing our policies, improving our structure, or even getting inputs as far as the business operations are concerned. So it's a holistic process. It's one part or piecemeal within the entire pie. So in order to calibrate performance, there are certain soft and hard indicators also of return on investment that could be tapped. So there are some obvious measures like sales, like volume, quality, efficiency, productivity, which gives you basic utility in terms of numbers and targets that can be achieved. But there are certain soft indicators like a customer satisfaction index, or it could also be about team growth or team morale, or how cohesive is the team within, is also going to give us very valuable inputs in terms of tracking how do we ensure that there is retention among the team members, how do we ensure that we are going to catch the attrition and promote the team to do better and better. So business doesn't always allow us a sandbox approach. What I mean by that is we don't really have the luxury, like even Amit touched upon, to try out several iterations before choosing the best way out. It is always gonna give, because the risk is going to be high and time is absolutely equivalent to money in any business. So hence we only have this one chosen way, and we have to make the most of what it can deliver to us. Hence, to optimize, we need to reevaluate the performance measures and replace any productivity blockers that we may face. This could very well be done by leveraging technology and HR analytics. When it comes into play, the data that we have gathered can only be put across through various dashboards. It could be used to churn out certain metrics which might be able to help us make better decisions and have more efficiency in terms of time, process, the effort put in, and cost, of course. So, accordingly, certain learning interventions can also be designed around it to make it a holistic learning process. So, those are my 2 cents on that.
Thank you for sharing those insights, Anita. Amit, what are your thoughts when it comes to performance calibration?
So I think taking cues from what Anita mentioned. So one thing definitely I would like to repeat and reiterate is that the time cycles which are now relevant for calibrations for performance are much shorter than they used to be. While yes, in some business environments and context, let's advanced IDP planning for 1 year may still be relevant, but I have seen that it is becoming increasingly rare for any organization to look at a person for even a year in advance, that this is what we need to do for this person, or this person needs to do for their own development in a full year, because in a year a lot of things can change. So, one of the things I remember we spent a lot of time during one of our years in the MBA was learning about delegation. And delegation was, in those times, it was more about what you are doing. You just delegate that to your team members so that it gets done faster, and you also empower more people. So I think it is also a good time for learning to delegate the responsibility of learning to the workforce. So it's not just, as Anita mentioned, they don't really have time to plan interventions, and they keep changing so fast. I think it is only a matter of time that the organizations have to look at the workforce to also become responsible for their own learning and growth to some extent. Of course, they cannot do the entire thing, but and to do that, as a company, I think learning has to become the centerpiece of the performance culture. So as Anita mentioned, the learning culture has to be very, very strong. So I think a part of the performance, which whatever we are measuring, has to be what learning are we, doing in terms of, are we learning on our own? Are we able to understand what we learn, what we need to learn for our job today and tomorrow? I think empowering the workforce to take control of their own growth and learning, that will be a key point here. Because even if you have a 20, 30, 40 people team of L&D experts and professionals, that won't be enough when things change very rapidly. Just designing an intervention takes a month, and then by the time it is rolled out, it is changing. It is not going to be a lot of fun for anybody to either develop or use it. And that is, and I think, as we have seen in the last 4 months, when forced upon us, technology actually can come and help us in various ways. So today we can deliver training through a variety of media. It could be virtual, self-learning, and multiple other technologies. So I think using the technologies we have available can also reduce the load of designing and developing a lot of interventions at the L&D side. And also, coming back to my first point, empower the workforce to take control of their learning. For me, that and making learning the kind of centerpiece of the performance culture, that will be an important step which we need to take in future.
Okay. Moving on, Anita, we all are living in the era of constant disruption and technological advancement. What role does agility play in talent management processes?
Sure. So that's a very interesting question, Shruti, and something that's very close to my heart. And that reminds me of a quote actually by an American businessman and philanthropist, W. Clement Stone, who rightfully said, "Aim for the moon, for if you miss, you still land up among the stars." Such is the case with agility in a corporate setup as well. It's a complete mindset shift. It's achieved through deep customer collaboration and adaptive learning methodology. Companies are now striving actually towards becoming a Velcro organization. So what I mean by that is we are looking at quick fixes, something which is seamless, somewhere where people can be rearranged quickly and creatively without making major structural changes or even fundamental changes to the organizational setup. That is where agility takes center stage. Agility in terms of processes, in terms of methodologies, in terms of solutions, and also execution on ground. The utopian world that we actually would want to live in is frankly getting replaced with a VUCA environment, which doesn't only disrupt a lot of things that we believed in or grew up with, it's completely blurring our geographical boundaries. And also, frankly, business leaders are required to face and required to take up a multi-pronged approach in terms of handling their business challenges. The brick and mortar office setup that we were all used to has completely had to take a back seat. We need to adapt and reinvent continuously. For effective talent management, again, coming down to something I touched upon previously, a blended learning approach is also a very apt example of agility. This has allowed us to take on learning online, digitize it, and also connect a lot of people across the globe onto the same platform. It gives us a chance to combine our functional learning, the technical learning, as well as plethora of behavioral courses to deal with. It is certainly going to help us solve our operational challenges, and the internally nurtured development interventions can even help us out there. What we have to do now is to keep pace with the accelerating speed of the market and the changing trend that it presents to us. This can very well be done by a value proposition that we offer to all our employees, which is something which is coherent in Gulfoil, the organization that I work with right now. We are being cognizant to the fact, and just to cite an example there, that employees right, every employee, whether it's an interning graduate or whether it's a transitioning worker or it could be a seasoned professional, has the right to learn. And that right to learn and grow and become a professional who's multi skilled and who is able to move across roles as and when required, and also take on larger responsibilities in terms of climbing the career ladder is also as essential and will allow us to give the experience and the opportunity to grow further. So, this kind of value proposition is definitely going to place us in a much higher pedestal when compared to being non agile as an organization. Now, it could also, when I talked about the mindset initially, it could also become and be applied to our business leaders who are probably bound by the inherited and a stronger learning approach which has worked for them previously, but now they would be forced to undergo a change, and change is here to stay. So what can we say, agility is going to be a part of our life for some time now.
Great. Thank you for sharing those insights, Anita. So much learning. Amit, what are your views? What role do you think agility plays in talent management processes?
So, as Anita mentioned, the last point, agility is here to, the change is here to stay, and we have to be very, very agile to adapt to that. Last, I think 4 months have actually been kind of an eye opener for almost everyone, not just professionally, but at a personal level. And it has not just changed things the way we work, but the way we live. And agility in talent management, I think, is the key because within a day, everybody moved remote working model, and I think it was one of the biggest challenges which the companies face is how to keep my workforce relevant and trained for what is to come. While there was a risk which was there in terms of what is going to happen to the business, that does not stop us from learning and carrying on our business as we used to do. So I think and being kind of a service provider in this domain, we have seen first-hand experience of how companies have moved very, very fast to change the way they used to look at training and learning, and that has been an example of agility for us. The way companies, and I think that is possible only when the teams which are there for L&D, the experts which are working on the L&D function, they understand how important it is to be agile, because while yes, change is constant and it is there, we cannot just kind of sulk at that and say, okay, this is what it is and we really can't do much. So I think a lot of that depends on how how skilled the experts are in terms of the L&D domain, and the agility for entire talent management is very, very important over there. And the business context is not going to slow down. It is going to change, and we don't know what is going to happen after 2 months or 4 months. And even though it was still, and in my experience, when we hire somebody, so from onboarding to get that person ready for performing the job which they were hired for, that time cycle is now shortened a lot. So every company needs people to come in faster, learn faster, and be ready for the job much faster. And then this happens every now and then, and the cycle continues. So in my view, the overall process which we have for talent management, it has to now start factoring in and anticipate short and medium term changes. So while we are creating interventions and all the training activities for today, we have to keep in mind and factor in actually what if things change for for a different way in the next 3 months or 4 months. How will these interventions cope up with that? So using technology which can help you change, adapt immediately and fast, they will be helpful. And also, I think while this is very obvious, but these new working models we have now found ourselves in, the remote working from home, they will need a fresh approach to how we engage and work with our employees in terms of the talent management. And I would say that it may not be possible anymore for all the interventions we have for learning to be very reactive. And I think Anita mentioned in the beginning that we just cannot sit and react to what is happening. And once it is done, there is no corrective measure we can take to fix it. So I think we cannot have any reactive interventions for learning. We have to think ahead and work out and factor in changes as they are happening and unraveling.
Totally agree with you. Learning intervention can no longer be in reactive. We have to think over it. Anita, I can see that we are getting a lot of questions on the chat section. But before we take that, do you have any last advice for our viewers?
Sure. So I would like to take this opportunity to give some perspective in terms of talent management. While devising any strategy, what I have learned personally from my experiences, do celebrate all your failures. They only push you to succeed better. So, learning from within can be immense if we decide to leverage the rich experience, the internal expertise, the relevant design, the pertinent content, robust technology, and finally, the right business partner to help us with the execution. So while in my current organization, I have designed a system which is more customized, it has managed to integrate all our processes. And with our own intuition that we have built upon the values of Gulf Oil, it has helped us design a world class training program. It has ensured continuous professional development for all our high potential employees, new managers, and equipped them to be the future ready leaders. That's my success mantra for building a sustainable talent pipeline. Thanks.
Great. Amit, would you like to summarize and share some actionable takeaways for our audience?
Sure. I think Anita has kind of given a right example of how they have done this at their company. And I think for me, again, I'll summarize what I've been saying for the last half an hour of the session is there are two ways to go about this. One is we have to accept and factor in the fact that the business environment is changing very, very fast. It won't really give us a lot of time to think, plan, and react to the situation. So we have to become very, very agile in terms of how we look at the entire talent management process. And I think Amita mentioned that using robust technology, because it cannot be done manually. A lot of things cannot be done manually. So using the right tools, and not just one or two tools, using everything you have at your disposal in terms of technology, be it podcast or virtual training or mobile apps or engagement or experience apps which are there in the market. Whatever you can use for your company and whatever is aligned with your strategy and culture, please use that. That will really, really be helpful in terms of adapting to something very, very fast. And also, again, it is not only about training the workforce for the task you have at your hand right now. It is also about building a pipeline or a culture about learning, which can take your strategy one step ahead. And in the end, and as we all know, strategy is nothing if culture is not aligned with that plan. So I think and the culture, I would believe, has to be built around learning as a centerpiece. So we have to empower our workforces to be able to be responsible for their own learning and growth. I think that would be a key, because that is where the world is moving, and given the pace at which things are changing, everybody has to take a lot of responsibility about their own learning and growth, and in the career profile.
Sure. Those were some great action pointers, Amit. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Amit, for those valuable inputs that you shared with us. I can see that we're getting a lot of questions from our attendees, so I will take the first question. The first question that we have is from J.R. Raman. He take this question.
Sure. And thank you so much, Jayaraman, for the question. Now that gig economy has become a reality, we no longer have people who want to be employed with an organization for 25 long years. We have more of freelancers and consultants who are becoming part of our workforce and getting younger by the day. So I would just like to share one of the inputs that I have used in our organization is we have developed a separate platform. So while the requirements meant for any gig or contractual workers or certain freelancers could be very sketchy, but though how we have met with that is that we have designed a separate portal altogether wherein all our learning resources have been replicated, barring a few confidential and irrelevant data points which we may have, which could be specific to the organization, and that is something which has been restrained over there. But they have complete access to our entire learning library, including the technical resources, so that they understand where is the business coming from, what is the business model that we use. So whether they are part of the sales team or whether they are part of the a finance team, they can still go through a complete global induction that we have to offer. And hence we can not only provide them with growth and additional impetus, we are also engaging them further to give additional inputs and add more value to the table.
We also have another question from J.R. Raman. It's a very interesting question. He asks, we are in the era of self-managed team. How to strategize the talent management? Anita, you would want to answer that?
Sure, no problem. So like the buzzword that goes right now, Atmanirbhar, that is what we are now, and that is what we have to become in time to come. So managing a team virtually more challenging, of course, because you don't have the human touch and the touch points that we had initially. While we were already replicating that model in a global setup, but now even for a local or a domestic setup, it is going to become a challenging task for us. But we can definitely achieve that having put across certain touch points which are regular and which are more frequent than the others. You can have your team huddles being done at a frequent level. You can devise your talent management to not only include the typical aspects like succession planning or job grading, but you can extend your talent management in order to groom those employees. So you can take up, say, mentorship projects, which goes a long way in building the trust and also retaining the employees, making the team members feel valued. The coaching sessions could also be undertaken. There are several products which are available in the market, several certifications, or it could also be done in house with some senior and more experienced professionals that you may have, who could also become a buddy, or set up that kind of a system wherein people feel supported, they feel valued, and they feel heard. That will definitely take it a long way in terms of creating that cohesiveness and giving the talent management a structure which is more with a human touch.
Great. The next question we have is, what are the tools and technologies available and how effective they are in delivering learning in times of pandemic? Amit, do you want to take this question?
Sure. And I think we have been talking about that for a while now. So yes, the pandemic, though unfortunate, definitely has kind of thrown light on a few areas where the technology is really, really helpful. And in terms of what we have been helping our customers with in terms of utilizing more technologies, one is of course, a lot of customers are trying to move their classroom training to a virtual classroom training model. And the only caveat we share with our customers is that just having the same training on a virtual classroom mode is not going to be enough. It has to be redesigned to some extent, if not the content, at least the delivery, because you have to redesign the entire training, because virtual classroom is not as I would say, people are not as responsive. You don't even know how they're absorbing the learning. So you have to create more interactivities and interactions within the entire session. So one, of course, the tool available is virtual classroom training, where you can immediately start converting some of your classroom training activities to a more virtual environment. The second is what we have found useful is use of digital learning environments, which include both mobile and non-mobile, like the web apps, and being able to reach everybody, and as I said, give the power of learning and the responsibility of learning to the workforce, to the people, and make them responsible, and let them have access to, and also be able to find content or training activities relevant to their performance in job.
Interesting. There's another very, very interesting question here. How can we create business case to invest more in development of leaders and the workforce, given the need of cost cutting? Anita, do you want to take this question?
Sure, and it's a very pertinent question, and probably something that's on top of mind recall and top of our head when it comes to managing the cost angle right now, when all the organizations are actually aiming at cutting cost and capex is completely being put on hold. It's a very relevant question. So thank you for that. Some of the methodologies that we can adopt is definitely turning towards the learning platform, which can be e-learning. So it is going to definitely cut a dime of your learning budget, because the main cost effectiveness or the main cost inducive inputs do come from travel, the managing the accommodation when we have face to face trainings or classroom trainings being arranged. So go digital, go online. It will only help you build up a strong business case. And in terms of the leaders, it's not only the team members that require support, right? Even the business leaders are going to be, there has to be some amount of apprehension with them. There has to be, some amount of support being provided to them as well. So when we are looking at developing the organization, say n-1 and downwards, we should also focus on those leaders who are actually going to set the bar. The benchmark or the milestone is going to get set at the senior leadership end. So you can definitely build a very strong business case stating that these people also require, say, a certain coaching expertise on how to, take care of your own employees, how to manage virtual teams, how to do, effective delegation in terms of working, how to assess people while they are working online and working from home. So these are some of the aspects which even the leaders will need help with. It will not only help them hone their own potential, it will also help them realize how they are capable of helping their team.
Very well put. Go digital and go online. I think that's going to be the new motto. So another question we have here is from Ankita. She asked, what would be some of your most must do and non-negotiables while devising a self-sustaining development cycle for creating the pipeline? Ankita, you want to take this question, or Amit, do you want to go for it?
I'd like Anita to answer that.
Yeah.
She's the expert one here.
Yeah.
Sure. So there are some things which are, which can be done away with or not on the first priority list, and there are certain things that absolutely cannot be compromised on. So a self-sustaining development cycle. Firstly, I would like to state that it takes its own sweet time. So it took us, rather in my organization, I would state it took us almost 4 years before I can say that I got a crackerjack pool of resources with me who are multitasking and multi-talented, but it took us those 4 long tedious years. So firstly, patience, give it time. It is not going to happen overnight. It will take some time to gather the pace and to develop that momentum for it to become a well-oiled process by itself. A self-sustaining development cycle firstly needs to be, going back to one of the pointers that Amit mentioned, that we need to make the business also take as much ownership. The accountability cannot only be put upon, say, the HR team members, it has to be shared by the business. We need to have the expectations of the business as well as the mentees, so to say, aligned in order to deliver something which is of benefit to both. So we need to first position the program in a way that they both realize, both ends of the terminals realize what's in it for me. So branding and positioning is one of the things that I have learned to realize is absolutely something that you cannot compromise on. And please don't do it because it will dilute the basic position that you want to keep and have it as a self-running process. It will definitely help it gather that momentum, and the steam will eventually run off if it is something that we are required to push without having a pull factor to it.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those insights, Anita. The next question, how do we bring in a digital first mindset in a traditional organization? Amit, you want to take this question?
Sure. Thank you. So I think it is not really a question of bringing in a digital mindset. It is a question of how to go about being a full digital organization from every in every aspect of your I think function. And I think our last webinar was focusing on this point itself: is how do you become a digital first organization? And the two parts to that. One is, of course, the need to understand that there is no way out, COVID or not. And this even if COVID did not happen this year, the way business was changing and the things were changing, it was just a matter of time that we would need to do a lot more with our time than we are doing right now, and also in different working models. So I think remote working and this the entire workforce not at office, it may have kind of pushed the calendar ahead, but the digital first was about is about to happen just about any time in future. So the first, I think, the part is to understand that there is most efficiency is derived when you are able to automate a lot of things which you are doing manually right now. And the second part is that it's not about just automation, it is also about efficiency. And the more you do digital, and of course it has to be done in a secure manner, it has to be planned out and thought out really well. It has many implications on your information security, data privacy, and multiple aspects. But if it is done very well and planned very well, it can actually save a lot of time, and that time can then be devoted to developing your people into areas which are more for future growth. And I think today, every aspect of business, there are a lot of tools available, a lot of technologies available, which can help you scale up from a small function to a larger entire org-wide capability for digital first. So I think the first step will be to start somewhere, and learning, e-learning, HR functions, they are one of the strongest areas where digital first mindset can really be helpful, because managing a large workforce, developing a sustainable talent pipeline, they all can be made easier, if not easy, by having a digital kind of a set of tools which can help you in developing that workforce.
Thank you, Amit, for sharing those inputs. I will move on to the next question. The next question we have is for Anita. What should be the immediate priorities when it comes to strategizing skilling initiatives, keeping in mind the post-COVID scenarios?
Okay, sure. So all of us, I guess, are probably sitting in the same boat, and all of us are facing similar challenges in terms of what is it, what kind of trainings can be provided. So firstly, in terms of the areas that we can look at, we can probably look at having certain podcasts or webinars which are more relevant. So you could always link it to the kind of scenario, identifying the challenges that the teams and the team leads are facing currently. So it could be on the lines of how to manage teams virtually, how to build resilience in terms of in the face of adversity. It could be maybe touching upon the six thinking hats, because that allows you to design a structure and gives you a better more structured approach to your thought process. It could also be circulating around a renewed importance for health and safety. So please do consider, and I would urge all our attendees to consider health and safety as a major priority for this year, and push it across through various agendas that you may have. So whether it is through PPTs which are turned into interactive SCOM-led courses, or it could be through courses which are available off the shelf. There are so many libraries and so many products in the market that can help you deliver that. So please do explore those, because health and safety is something we are going to live with for some time to come, and we may as well use this platform to also appraise our employees on the kind of precautions that they can take. So these are some of the options that you can explore.
Thank you, Anita. I think health and safety are the most crucial aspects right now, and teams should be looking at them. Moving on to the next question, it's by Sanka Prasad. He asked, in this new abnormal, employees are not showing the willingness and the keenness to attend any trainings. Is there any technique to motivate employees for virtual trainings? Anita, you want to answer this question? Anita, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Sure. So thank you for that question, Sanka. And one of the ways I can share with you is something that we have done as within our organization. It's surprising that a LinkedIn survey that I was going through in the last week mentioned that 130% increase in the online learning capabilities has happened in the last 4 months. Now whether that is that can be challenged, and it could be applicable for maybe some of the industries or some of the sectors, I'm not really sure, but something that I have used within my team and seems to be working decently well is we have made it into a package learning course. So we have designed an entire capsule that will entice people to come and take up the virtual learning courses. So what I mean by that is we have, say, a certain webinar which has been put in place that has been backed by certain online courses to reaffirm those learnings and refresh that learning. So it is being presented as something which can have an example or a case study which is being built within the organization, backed by a webinar which equips the individual with tools of how you can actually action those, and then an online refresher training to reaffirm upon those thoughts. So as an entire capsule, we have seen a lot of engagement come through from our employees. So it could be one of the ways that you could also try out within your organization.
Thank you, Anita. I hope that answers your question, Sanka. Next question is by Harshvardhan. He asked, there is no or little change in reward and performance management systems in the organization, which is an additional stress on employees working with Target. What changes can we bring in the system to reduce this pressure? Amit, do you want to take this question, or Anita, do you want to go ahead?
I'll answer to my experience, and then Anita can add to that.
Yes.
So I think this is more a question for the leaders to answer, in terms of this should not really happen in this situation, because the leaders have to be really aware of what is happening at the ground level in the company at each person level. And if the performance management system is kind of impervious to the fact, or it is insensitive to the fact that there is things have changed for everybody, I think it is more of a process to change at the leaders level. They have to percolate that understanding top down, that yes, these are strange times, and the things could be different, and we cannot have the same targets which we used to have before the situation, and measure everybody on the same performance targets even now. So I think it is more about the leaders to be able to sensitize their entire workforce that things are changing, and there is a change in the way we look at these systems. So that is the only way to reduce pressure on people, is to make them understand that this is something not absolutely critical. Yes, and it's not to do away with the systems, but you have to realign the systems as per the current times. And I'm sure Anita has also gone through some experience of her own. I would love her to answer that, to add to that.
Sure. So I resonate with your views completely, Amit. And a top-down, a very focused communication can definitely help relieve any kind of stress that the employee might be undergoing, especially so to say in a sales function where you are completely governed by targets and your incentives are at stake. One of the other things that maybe you could also look at is identify the need for a lot of organizations who have come down to a 9 month year instead of the 12 regular months, because the first quarter has been rather slow or dimmed in terms of the performance. So that could be one of the ways you could recommend, that consider all the targets for 9 months. They obviously get revised as per the time available and the time required to perform. So your targets getting revised will at least relieve some amount of initial pressure. Now, we also need to address the fact that people are generally apprehensive and worried about even stepping out onto the field. So give them the equipment or help them with the safety precautions that they can go and utilize while they are out in the market, providing them with sanitizers and masks and gloves. And there are different precautionary methods that different organizations are using. So make it a point to convince your organization to push that agenda forward and allow the targets and the business numbers to take a back seat. This will not only motivate your employees and bring them to have a sense of belongingness towards the organization, it will also help them improve their performance if they are feeling assured from within.
Absolutely.
Okay, so thank you, Anita, for sharing those insights. Thank you, Amit. I'll take the last questions. We are running out on time, so I will just. There are a lot of questions coming on, but I'll take these questions from Veena. She asked, "What measures do you use to measure quality of the pipeline amid success?" Anita, you want to take this question?
Sure. So I believe Veena is touching upon building a sustainable talent pipeline. I think that is what she's
Yes.
touching upon in terms of how do we ensure that the quality when we do the succession planning exercise is to the point where we are expecting or certainly benchmarking within the organization. So there are different ways of calculating, or assessing what is the kind of quality that we are looking at. So when we say leaders, now leaders could be, uh, there is a filtration process that you need to run while starting off your succession planning exercise. Now succession planning exercise is one done at a short term level, which is in the next 2 to 3 years, and the other side is in the long term, which is 5 to 6 years. So we have to do the adopt a dual pronged approach while we are doing the succession planning exercise. So that will help us identify the two timelines that we are looking at. Now, we may have a replacement in the succession pipeline for a short term, but we may not have somebody for the long term. So that could also be a challenging situation that we need to figure out depending on the organizational policy. But in terms of the quality, now you can have certain benchmarks kept or certain matrices applied to actually funnel out and use a funnel methodology to filter out the kind of blockers that you may want to remove. So it could be the last 2 years performance appraisal. It could be whether the person has undergone certain training programs, or it could be preferred if the person has undergone certain training programs. It could also be what is the kind of revenue and has the person managed the P&L, or depending on the level that we are looking at. Because generally succession planning is done to the level of n-1 and maximum n-2, beyond which there is a certain career path which is very definitive in nature and people can actually go through that. So it's only at the leaders or the new leaders or the emerging leaders that we are looking at when assuring the quality in the succession talent pipeline. So these could be some of the benchmarks that you could utilize to evaluate whether the quality and the throughput is coming as per the input and the expected output for yourself.
Thank you, Anita. We are running out of time, so I'll have to conclude today's webcast. Thank you so much, Anita and Amit, for those great insights. A lot of learning. I'm sure our audience also had a great deal to learn from today's session, and there are a lot of questions coming up, which you can take offline. Once again, we would like to thank our today's webcast partner, Upside LMS, and our speakers for the invaluable information that they had shared with us today. Meanwhile, you can provide your feedback in the survey link provided in the chat section because your input matters. That concludes today's webcast. Thank you, stay safe, and have a great day.
Thank you, Shruti. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good day, everyone. Thank you, Anita.